Hello everyone, good to be here. There's some people moving in, which is nice. I'm also a little bit blinded by this spotlight, so I can't really see all of you, but I hope you've had a really inspirational day. I've had a really good day, and it's really good to be at something called Digital Health Days, where you can actually see that things are taking off in this field. Because there's been quite a lot of frustration over the years where what's going to happen in this field and what are all the ideas going to be ending up on. I was asked by Nima to talk a little bit about this area from an entrepreneur's perspective. And it's a good thing that you pointed out that I've been enduring this. You need a lot of stamina within healthcare to start companies. That's one thing, that's for sure. And when asking there what I would suggest for other entrepreneurs, it is that you just keep on going. There are lots of things to do in here. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background from Tasteline, where I started out. And obviously, it was within the consumer business, which has really had such an extraordinary impact on consumers. I mean, we were early on in 1999, we started out as a recipe database, basically. And our aim was to get more people to use search engines to find recipes. Rather than looking in cookbooks, rather than looking on TV shows, how could we get people to use search engines and move it the other way around? I want spaghetti for dinner, what am I going to have with it? How many different recipes are there? And some amazing things really came out of that. And obviously, the internet has had a huge impact on consumers and how they use the internet. We're all in here because of that. What's happening, though, is obviously patients are among the consumers. They are learning these things. They're expecting a lot more out of healthcare, which is far behind in this field. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But back to Tasteline. Our most searched for recipes was the traditional kladdkaka, or brownies, or whatever you'd call it. It was often added to the database by the consumers as well. They wanted to add their particular brownie to the recipe database, the lighter one, the more chocolatey one, or whatever, the better one that they could add to this. And all of that also gave a good ignite to our recipe database. All of a sudden, we weren't doing all the work ourselves. We didn't have to push all the content. We got a lot of help. And we're seeing some of that, obviously, helping with patients as well. Patients like me, for instance. So we started out with old media, the TV, the cookbooks, the magazines. We moved from our recipe cards that we used to have in shops and took them online. So one of the main things that was happening here is obviously what made it actually take off. So there were some needs. People were always looking for recipes. They were looking right before dinner. We could see the trends, seeing at right before 5 or when they left work, we could see, okay, this is when the traffic was going. This is when they were really looking for some recipes. The mobile industry, when that took off, when people started using their mobiles for looking at recipes, all of a sudden our traffic doubled, tripled. So all of a sudden all of this was going at an intense speed. What learnings can be drawn from that? The bubble, the dot-com bubble. Tasteline did survive because there was a lot of money in the industry in 1999. We just had to household with it. A lot of the companies didn't do that. About $2.7 billion were lost on these 10 failed companies alone. That's a lot of money. This is in 1999, and are we seeing the similar trends right now? What's going on? One thing that made Tasteline survive was the fact that we did get capital quite early. We househeld with it and really tried to get the company going, and lots of people were using the service. But it was also a lot of owing to the fact that we had a payment method we had a business model that actually worked. AdWords, we had search words, just like Google, we were selling AdWords. We called them food words. We sold olive oil, or we sold a hot dog, the word for that. And then when people searched the recipe and found that in it, the company behind it would sponsor that. So there was a business model. Now, my next venture was MedUniverse, and this is where I tried to really be inspired by all that I'd learned from Tasteline and see what can we do within the life science industry. How can we get people to share more information, not around brownies, but around patient cases? And I wanted to target the doctors with this. How could we use and build a database for doctors where they could actually share their experiences around patient cases? So in 2008, my co-founder Anna, who's sitting up here as well, we're both Annas, we're both blonde, it's very easy, we can send one another to the companies that we want to visit, it's very convenient. We decided that there is an opportunity here for us to maybe do a Facebook or a LinkedIn for doctors, a network for doctors. Because that was what had worked at Tasteline, the sharing economy, the actual using of interaction between people to get more information. There were a couple of hitches with that. Not actually a couple, there were several. And this is where we really were welcomed into healthcare and saw that, okay, there are a couple of challenges here. First of all, the doctor target group were not the most sharing people. I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but I can see some of you now are laughing. I should have had my glasses up here, my sunglasses. It was extremely, well, I don't know how to put this politically correct. Well, I'll just spit it out. It was extremely frustrating. We really worked hard at understanding, why are we not sharing this? What are we not understanding? And we realized quite quickly that the hierarchical structure within, between doctors, that there's always somebody who knows a little bit more than you, could be intimidating. How am I as a student going to share my questions around a patient case when there's always going to be somebody who knows more, or a doctor, even the doctors in between, a little bit older than the students, might not want to answer because there's always a professor who might know more and I might say the wrong thing. On top of that, we had another thing. Well, there wasn't a lot of time for doctors to start using these platforms. And we quite early on realized that whenever we came and saw a doctor, and not because we needed help with anything within our body, rather than just testing the concept, they always said to us, who has actually tricked you into believing that we need something like this? So we decided, okay, well, maybe this is just not the way forward. As an entrepreneur, you have to be very agile. And we were, I think. We're still alive anyway. And we decided, okay, there is one thing that really works. And that was what we called a way of sharing the patient case among different target groups. But one thing we really saw was that the doctors were on one end, the pharmaceutical industry was on one end, and the patients were somewhere in between. Now, the shared knowledge here was obviously all around patient cases. The pharma companies had the drugs and therapy knowledge that they wanted to reach out to the doctors with, so that that information eventually could reach the patients. The communication within this was not very well done at the time we started this. So we decided to start a software as a service company instead, where we focused on patient case sharing. We built a tool where you could add a patient case, send it to the doctor target group, get them to be challenged by this patient case and say, are you going to be able to solve this? 38-year-old woman comes in with the following symptoms. What diagnosis are you making? What treatment are you giving? And along the way, really follow how are the different doctors responding to this particular patient case and pick up on the different trends. Obviously, the digital tools in this are the perfect way of gathering data. So behind the scenes, we're obviously gathering all the results. How did the doctors answer to all these different questions? And the tool can be used by hospitals when testing the students. For instance, if you know that on a Monday you've had a particular patient case and you've talked about it, you want to ask the 40 doctors in your clinic, so how did they actually respond to this after a week after having the patient case? Do they remember the particular case and the important steps of going ahead and giving the right treatment, or did they not remember it? So you can use it as a way of education, but you can also use it as a method of actually asking market questions from a pharmaceutical company perspective. So that's what we've been working on for the last 2 years, and we now have 15 paying pharma clients. We're moving out internationally and picking up good speed. And the beauty of it is that we're finally seeing the connections that we were wanting. This is something that we finally ended up getting the sharing between the doctors, the pharma industry, and which eventually also leads to the patients. So it's exciting times for us. Although I still see that there are very many obstacles along the way. I think some of the things that we can see here today as an Endnote speaker, I've heard a lot of the things that are going on today. There have been some development that are good for healthcare, obviously. We moved from old versus digital, from old media to this digital media scene rather than new media. It can only be new for so long. We have very internet-savvy patients. They know how the internet works, and they're doing a lot of the development for us. We have very internet-savvy healthcare professionals from a consumer perspective, maybe more than a professional perspective. And I'd like to talk more about this, and I hope to get an opportunity later on to discuss this. Why is it that doctors that are super internet savvy in a consumer perspective, they buy all their trips online, they do all their banking online, do not get the opportunities within their working space to do the same things? That's something that's quite difficult to understand, and we need to understand what regulatory aspects are preventing invention here. We've also got an internet-savvy life science companies, and particularly here, I think, also very wealthy companies. I mean, if you look at the pharmaceutical and medtech industry, they have a lot of money to put into this, so it's not that. But I mean, the first time when we moved into the pharmaceutical industry, we realized how far they were from doing digital projects. They were still on sending pamphlets to doctors. And this is something that we realize, how are they making this measurable? What is it that is intimidating or hindering them to move into this? And we quite early on realized that obviously regulatory has a lot to do with this. Do we have an internet-savvy government? Well, again, what can be done in this area? What is it within politics that's really putting a dampering on this? I think we're going to see a lot of things on the startup scene. You've seen so many exciting companies today, and I think the main thing to think about here is obviously how are they going to move ahead with what business models and what are the investment opportunities here, and who is it that is going to be investing. So that's something that we can see from now on, and that we hope to be that I hope to keep discussing from today. So what else can we talk about? One of the things that I really picked up today is that the whole morning was about patient centricity. I think it's been an amazing year on a digital health perspective, going to all these conferences, and the pharmaceutical company always talking about we need to be more patient-centric. Well, of course. How else are your products going to survive? So that's sort of a natural, right? But how can we get patient centricity to really also get into the entrepreneurial area? How does it work with regulations? So the regulatory aspects, I think we really need to discuss and question some of the truly established truths within this. We talked about the kings and castles this morning. There are a lot of companies out there who sort of very, very protectionist about this is how I'm going to do it. The silos in the industry, it's extremely fragmented still. So that's something that we need to keep on discussing. I certainly hope you had a very inspiring day here. I hope to see many of you tomorrow as well. I think for me this is really a sign that we're moving into this at a much higher speed from today onwards than just from last year's Digital Health Days. So I hope to talk to many more of you about not just MedUniverse, but also about the digital development within healthcare in general. Thank you.
Yay! Exactly. Thank you, Anna. And also putting a perspective to the entrepreneurial side of it. I think we're going to have lots of questions. What I thought, we could take one question, and then I thought after Laura's talk, I can have both of you on stage, and we can sort of have more of a debate. So are there any questions or insights?
I had one question, actually. I'm very curious, and one of the things that I was hoping would come up a little bit more at Digital Health Days is it seems like someone has to get sick in order to start using digital health tools. So what is it that you're doing for proactive healthcare? Why does someone have to be a patient in order to use digital healthcare?
So that's a question to me. Well, I certainly don't think you have to be sick, and I think it's much more important that you're healthy when you start looking into digital healthcare to really get this development going. But a lot of ideas from an entrepreneurial perspective, and as you could have seen on the stage today, come from a problem orientation, something that you find that you want to solve. So it's quite a natural thing that once somebody has something that they want to get more insights about, they start developing around that. But what we can see now is that venture capital is picking up speed within this area. And they want to identify new projects within digital health. So I don't think it's going to come out of just patients anymore, because if there's money on the market, you're going to get a lot more entrepreneurs who are willing to invest time to see if they can build new companies. And I think we're going to see some of those initiatives come out of pharmaceutical industry as well, but not just the industry, also from venture capital, pure venture capital.
Thank you for that insight, and there'll be more questions later. Thank you, Anna.
I'll just sit here.